In today's digital age, the lines between work and travel have blurred like never before.
Usually when I'm working and have the most intense production schedule and all that is when I'm traveling. So when I have just like a vacation, my brain doesn't know how to turn off in that space.
You see it on TikTok and Instagram all the time. A new breed of content creators is changing the way that we experience and market unique destinations.
Ultimately, I think the one thing that through all of these discussions that I've had with all the different properties is that all you need is like one photographic space.
We're talking about successful influencer partnerships with Jordan Kahana, the founder of Stayamo.
The creators on our platform, who is a bit more of a content creator and who is an influencer, and understanding because there is a negative stigma when it comes to using the word influencer versus someone who like creates really beautiful art or storytells really well.
If you own a short-term rental, get ready to change the way that you think about your photos and marketing your property as we speak about how content creators can help elevate your brand.
Hey, we're kind of like a dating site of like homes that are wanting to have creators and creators that are wanting to travel. And so we are here to like introduce those two.
I'm Jason Muth, 29-time superhost on Airbnb. Back in 2016, we purchased our first vacation home, and since then we've welcomed over 5,000 guests and their furry companions to our properties. It's what we do full-time now. It is my chapter 2 in work, and we want to impart all this wisdom upon you so you can create a smart stay for your guests. Now, on with the show.
The one joke that I do say is that I'm not really good at vacationing because usually when I'm working and have the most intense production schedule and all that is when I'm traveling. So when I have just like a vacation, my brain doesn't know how to turn off in that space.
So besides Stayamo, which we'll talk about in just a second, like how do you bring in money for yourself? Like, is it sponsorships through your Instagram and TikTok account and everything, or are you actually working for another company too?
Yeah, so I've been full-time freelance content creator for 7 years. I had worked in the digital space on the corporate side. I ran social media for ESPN, NFL, Pepsi prior to finally taking the leap and doing this on my own. And so once again, very fortunate. I was like ramping myself up to leave corporate, and I was documenting my travels and storytelling. And I was on this road trip to the Grand Canyon and came across 2 abandoned puppies in the middle of the desert. And I was filming everything. So I have it on video. And because I was storytelling, that video went really viral. And so that's why I do all this traveling with my dogs and all of that. And I'm in that space and have been just kind of riding that wave for a bit and then learning in the space as much as I can on top of Stayamo.
Mm-hmm. Rory, I think I've been mischaracterizing people that we see online that kind of make a living doing that. I've been saying influencer, but really full-time content creator is, a little bit more well-rounded of a title, I think. And I think it has a little bit more esteem because, there's not a stigma with influencers, but, I'm sure you've seen influencers in the wild on Instagram. Have you seen that Instagram account? I literally saw one last week where this woman was in Asia and she took a thing of kerosene as motorcycles and mopeds were driving down. She was dancing around. She put a circle in the street and lit it on fire and started dancing. And I'm like, okay. I think we've moved over into like lack of safety with some people that are online, but I'm guessing the full-time content creation that you do is a little bit safer, and it actually dovetails into this technology company, this platform that you've put together called Stayamo. So Jordan, why don't you talk about what Stayamo is and, give us a little bit of history on why you founded that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to circle back and once we get discussing about the platform, kind of breaking down the difference of a content creator and an influencer and allowing your audience to kind of understand as they're navigating the creators on our platform, who is a bit more of a content creator and who is an influencer, and understanding because there is a negative stigma when it comes to using the word influencer versus someone who like creates really beautiful art or storytells really well. So now about Stayamo. So it launched in January of 2019. I got connected with my business partner who is in commercial real estate and owns a couple short-term rentals himself. And through us talking and through me being a creator and traveling more and wanting to stay more at hotels and boutique hotels and Airbnbs, we realized that there was this opportunity to bring those two together. So it was a great yin and yang of him understanding the property side and me understanding the creator side. And so since then, we have been growing pretty steadily, and obviously the pandemic slowed us down a bit, but we are now in a really good pace of sprint or good running space of growing from a creator side, as well as having properties across all 6 continents. We don't have anything in Antarctica, unfortunately. And yeah, it's a great place to connect the properties that are understanding or wanting a little bit more exposure, or wanting to get that open dates in their calendar to bring people on to get really high end photography, and to find a new outlet to market, because social media is so important in the short-term rental space.
Yeah. You know, the platform, when I was introduced to it, I'm looking at this thing, I'm saying, how have I not heard about this yet? You know, and I think it's a really brilliant way to pair those two things up, these really pretty properties. You know, and you're talking about the really nice properties. I mean, like, there's a lot on Airbnb that, you know, is just a 1 or 2 bedroom efficient apartment in like some, you know, urban core that's not really this magnificent property. I think
Mm-hmm.
of, you know, like, we have this thing called Auto Camp up here in New England, which, you know, is a bunch of, like, you know, it's a outdoor, you know, stationary Airstreams.
Mm-hmm.
At least the one on the Cape is, and there's other ones around the country, and it just seems so Instagrammable, with string lights and a fire pit and a common lodge. And, you know, I think about the types of properties that really just wow you. You know, the ones that are out in the Smoky Mountains, or the ones that are the cabins
Mm-hmm.
in Maine, the A-frames. You know, all the stuff that just looks really pretty. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
types of properties that I think full-time content creators can do some real magic in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It lends a hand. And so we're trying to find, so there is that balance of those, you know, there's certain apartments that are just like, hey, you're in the city center and you're very convenient for someone who wants to travel and want that personal space, but you might not be the most like marketably, like, it's a beautiful home and all that. And you can still have people from our, like, having content creators come in and shoot at your property is always beneficial. We have always seen a jump in bookings and engagement in general when there is lifestyle taking place in the photos. So much of it's a bit antiquated at this point of having just a barren room in the open space of your properties. People at this point, with how ingrained social media is in our culture, people need, like, people aren't creative enough, and that's where the creators come into play, of being like sitting at the poolside, sitting at the hammock chair on the porch of that A-frame to visualize. And so as a browser, as someone looking to go and wanting to stay somewhere, is like, I want to replicate that. I want to re-experience that exact, I want to sit there and watch the sunset, or hold my coffee in that hot tub that looks out onto the mountains, and doing that, as well as it gives our mind a frame of spatial awareness. Everyone has a story or an experience where they go into a hotel room and they're like, this room is not what or like they use a fisheye lens or something along those lines. But when you have someone sitting in the chair in the corner or standing by the window, you get a frame of reference of how the size and the space kind of plays into it. And that encourages people to save your home and hopefully eventually book and stay at your property.
Mm-hmm. So Rory, being a real estate broker, and you've seen a lot of listings in your life, this is very different from a traditional real estate listing. And, you know, the conversation I had last week at the meetup I spoke at, I was talking about how short-term rentals are a hospitality business and a real estate investment, more than just a real estate investment. So, you know, how does this fit into kind of the traditional model of photos for real estate?
Well, I mean, we've seen the progression with the short-term rentals from, over the past 10 years, where people would kind of put up their own photos, and, the guest expectations were relatively low at that point. But as the number of properties, the competition has gotten better and the experiences have gotten better. So is the expectation and listing itself. And I remember when we thought we were elevated when we just put in real estate style professional photos,
Mm-hmm.
having a real estate photographer come out and take a look at them. But those are very different too. Those are properties that are meant to talk about the space to a potential buyer. So they're elevated, they're high quality photos, things are neat and tidy. Obvious differences are for a guest, you don't need to show the HVAC unit where that's going to be interested enough to a buyer, but still the tone of the photography is going to be very different. One of the things, Jason, I think you did well is actually bring like a lifestyle photographer into the places and replace our photos um, with scenes about what it would be like to be staying in a weekend there. So putting out the platter of the wine and cheese platter, putting some close-ups that are you would never put in a real estate listing because that wine and cheese platter has nothing to do with the property you're purchasing. But for guests, it has everything to do with it. It's about them visualizing the time that they're there. And what I'm hearing now is there's a way to upgrade this even further, and that involves having actual live humans in the videos and in the pictures to show what it would look like to have people using the space.
Yeah, there has been conversation in the short-term rental space about using people in photos more. And we look at Zillow gone wild online. I was just talking about influencers in the wild on Instagram. And it's kind of like when you see people putting themselves in a real estate listing photo, that's kind of weird, right? I think that's not a standard accepted practice. Every so often you'll see people like, with their reflection in the mirror and their iPhone that's taking a picture, and you're like, wow, you're just lazy. Like you're just not doing it right. But
Yeah.
Jordan, what Rory's referring to is, kind of the first round of professional photos that we put together were with a traditional real estate photographer. And we had to explain to him like how we were planning on using these photos. And he still kind of captured them in a very standard essence way. But then I brought on, our guy, Mark Goodwin, who does amazing stuff. I hired him at my last job. He was it's one of the best. I shouldn't say best hire because then if people are listening and I used to work for me, then they're going to get upset. But like he was one of the best hires that we had. He's gone on to bigger and better, and he still does our photography. And his stuff, the lifestyle stuff that he put together at our properties has really elevated them to the point that like we had our best year ever last year. But now that I'm hearing what your platform can do to connect great properties with people that are content creators, it's really got my wheels thinking because in the short-term rental space, you follow it, right, Jordan, right? You're seeing more pictures with people in them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean, like, yes, I can understand a beautiful home and a nice shot and seeing that, and that draws my attention. But it's the bringing it, like I said, it's just being able to replicate in my mind of someone sitting next to the pool or in the jacuzzi or in the kitchen, or just kind of creating like life and enjoyment and actual activity in there, that I can visualize the space that much more of wanting, like, seeing a friend of mine who owns a couple of short-term rentals out in Joshua Tree just did like an FPV drone outside in the backyard because it had a pickleball court and it has like a little pool and just like something else, and so it flies through, and it's like I want to go out there with my friends and have that and do that. Like this want to replicate is encouraging higher bookings.
Is your friend Patrick out in Joshua Tree?
No.
All right. Yeah, there's a big
I have a lot of
operator out there.
contacts in Joshua Tree, so it was a good shot to throw the dart at.
It's a crazy market. I've never been to it, but like it really just took off, during the pandemic when everyone from LA was like, oh, I could find a second house and I could put on Airbnb, and now suddenly everyone did that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Stayamo, it's a platform. Here's my experience so far with it. Like I signed up, it was free to sign up. We put one of our properties up there. I didn't want to invest. I mean, I probably have a handful that would do well on there, but I didn't want to invest a ton of time with the second one and just want to test it out with the first one. Put the property up there. I'm allowed to kind of say how much I want to charge somebody, if anything, right? And you can give us some best practices there. And I put up some photos, put up a description, and then I kind of sat back and suddenly people started favoriting my property, and a number of people have reached out to me that they want to stay there. So as an owner, tell us like what should we do if what kind of property does well on that platform and gets interest from content creators, and what are some best practices that we should do if we want to kind of maximize our effort using Stayamo?
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are great questions. So I think ultimately, I think the one thing that through all of these discussions that I've had with all the different properties is that all you need is like one photographic space. There was a house in the Catskills that was like pretty antiquated on the inside, but had this incredible porch, and they would highlight the porch and you can get really great photos from the porch. And so they booked out a lot, so much so that they ended up selling the property through all of the creators that they had coming in and shooting at that one porch. And you can, cheat the chimney or the fireplace and all that on the inside that still looked really nice and cozy and warm. But like, that was kind of the extent of the photos that were taken at that property. And so I think at the baseline, if you just have one area that can be a little bit presentable, that allows for really nice photos to really pop, and whatever that is, it varies with a lot of different properties. And from there, I think, especially because I'm assuming your places are in New England area and that there's 4 seasons, a good best practice is having one creator come out every quarter so that there is a change of seasons. And so you see what it looks like in the fall and in the summer and in the spring and in the winter. And so that when it is winter time, that you're posting photos and marketing and adjusting, I think, like on Airbnb platforms or your direct booking sites, that when it's winter time, that maybe those are in the front so people understand what they're getting. It's a little confusing to, hey, it's December 15th and I want to book at your house, but you're showing me summer photos. And it's like, yeah, that's a beautiful view with lush trees, but I need to realize that I'm not getting that. And so, but there's still ways to make a cozy home that has snow feel very inviting and entertaining and all of that. And so I think having someone out come once a quarter to keep things fresh, and if you install something new, getting a creator out there to showcase this new feature, whether it's like, even if it's just art on the wall or whatever it kind of is, or a swing set or some, obviously there are so many things that you can do in your house to attract new audiences. And I think be willing to work with the smaller creators that create really, really good photos. Those are the ones that are going to work really hard for you and give you a great return, because they aren't jaded by having other brands send them free stuff, or being like, well, actually my rate is this, through other like brands that have really big money that are like, hey, we see that you have good, like, a following, here's some money. And like, it's a little different. We really try to tell our creators that this place has 365 units to sell a year. And even in certain locations, there's restrictions on that. Like New York, I know, is cracking down on that. And Palm Springs has restrictions on how many days. So even the 365 units gets kind of narrowed down even on that. So providing value, the biggest thing that you want to be looking for as a property is what you're getting in return. A Rolodex, a folder of photos and content that you can continue to repurpose is way, way more valuable than just them posting one photo for you on their page. Because once again, this was a big learning for us early on, is we had a big content creator stay at this cabin. We were super excited. He has like 2 million followers. His friends went out. They had like 50 to 100,000 followers. We're like, this is it. We are crushing it for this property. They brought in a ton of audience to that page, that cabin's page, and the page was filled with photos of their dog and like iPhone photo, low quality of the house. And so you didn't retain the audience to that property of like, whoa, that is a beautiful home. I need to save this. Because once again, as you guys know, it's a bit of a slow burn in terms of getting that booking. Is it available the dates that I want to go? How far is it from that? Where is it in location to me? Is it a drive? Do I have to fly? There are a lot of factors that come into play here, but bookings happen in the slow burn in the social media space of like, let me follow you. You guys have great photos. Like, this is a beautiful home that I'd love to stay at some point. And then, hey, 6 months, 8 months, you pop up because you have this folder of content and you're churning that out, that it like pops up on my feed is like, you know what, I do need a vacation. I'm going to do this. They are available now. Great. And it flows that way. So I know that's best case scenario when it comes to that, but it is just something that you need to think about in terms of working with the smaller creators, and getting back content is way more valuable than negotiating that one. And they should be over delivering for you anyways. At least that's my viewpoint of it, is like, okay, we agreed upon 15 photos. I took 300 and edited 50. It's like, so I'm going to be, for me, because it's my business and I'm not going to be a stickler about that. There are some creators in this space that are like, hey, here's 15. Here's a folder of the other 35. If you want to take a look, I usually charge this. Here, I can give you a deal to get the rest. And we've seen that before. And properties are like, yeah, it is worth the extra $200 to now have 50 photos that I can repopulate and circulate and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I'm on a
I'm
run
like,
here.
I want to give real life examples too. I like legitimately what's in my inbox on Stayamo. I almost want to get your opinion on what I'm hearing
Please.
back from this
Yeah, let's
creator.
do
But
it.
here's all right. So like, and I worked in the media business for a long time. I get barter, right? Like, a lot of our companies would want to do cash and barter. A lot of them just want to do barter, because half the time the other person doesn't use it. But like, this could be a barter situation. Like there's an opportunity cost. But see, I should think of it as an investment, right? If you think of it as an opportunity cost, you're saying, hey, these dates I won't be able to get revenue from if I book them. One thing to do is to try to get your unfilled dates where people can come on those unfilled dates. But so far my experience has been people seem like they want to come on the weekends. Okay. Those are the challenges, right? As an owner, because the weekends are really when we want that for our revenue to be able to pay our bills. So there's probably a little bit of figuring things out there. Like in the media space, a lot of times the barter schedule, if you're going to run it on radio or TV, that's going to run when it can get filled in, whereas you're going to sell your primetime spots in prime time. And sometimes the barter commercials might run during prime time if there's availability. So that's kind of a similar situation here where maybe a creator might come onto the platform and hit somebody that might have some availability during a prime time. And then you can kind of come to that agreement. So, the once every quarter is a really interesting thing. I've only been on the platform for our mud season up here in New England. So, like I'm eager to get people to come check out our property, but like nothing is in bloom, right? Like, we're recording this at the end of March. It's going to come out probably a few weeks later. I think it's going to come out in April or May. And hopefully by then everything's going to be in bloom. But we just had 20 inches of snow at the property that I'm thinking about having people staying at. Okay. Spring is not coming yet, right? We want spring to come so I can get some beautiful lush photos. And Rory clearly knows this property. He's been there with me many times. It is high above the top. You get views of Lake Winnipesaukee. We call it Granite Vista. It's a great, great place, right? So I think we can get some really cool photos. I just have to time it correctly with some folks. But this creator, who I might be having stay there, actually, by the time this comes out, maybe this person won't stay there, right? You want to stay for 2 nights, 2 free nights. In return, I'll create high quality content for your property that you could use on your website and social media platforms. My deliverables include 3 TikToks, 1 Instagram reel, 1 Instagram photo, 5 to 7 Instagram stories, and 5 to 6 photos showcasing the beauty of your home, so on and so forth. So like, that's like, those are the specific deliverables right there, but everything is negotiable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So depending on your priorities in this, if you're like, great, we want some social media buzz and we're going to take the risk of like having one of these pop. And I don't know what kind of content this creator makes, that if you're like, hey, his recent, like looking at his page and doing that, of being like, okay, they've stayed at a place and it's done that, or like, all right, let's just give this a shot, versus like, hey, make it 1 TikTok, 1 Instagram reel, and give us 10 to 15 photos instead for my use. There's more value for me there. And I know that what I'm getting, like, I can guarantee that at least I'm going to use this on a regular basis. And like, this gives me a little space to then get the next creator to come in once it's spring and bloom. So it's like, hey, this holds me over, versus like that, like I said, the social media push. And unless your house is really about to explode, or this person has a large following where that's the case. And so once again, it's a bartering system, like you said, and everything's negotiable, and it's what you're wanting to prioritize. And once again, like, what we've seen the most is like the deliverables to the home that they can then repurpose, that like the easy walkthrough videos and all of that kind of stuff that doesn't have a person in it, or it doesn't make it dated, that you can then tweak a little bit. Hey, this trending sound is going on. Let's throw that up again with a new sound because we have this and we've had this discussion. I will say 2 nights is probably the minimum. 3 should be the max. Like, they don't need more time than that. Usually my stays are 2 days. And, if I have a good relationship and it's like, hey, that'd be great to get a 3rd day. I do know some creators that are more on the professional side where you have to pay to get them to come there are like, I only need one night, I'm in and out. And for me, I'm just like, that's just so like, that's so quick of a short turnaround. You're essentially getting, you only get one sunset and one sunrise, and like you're in and out, and they're most likely not traveling with dogs either or doing stuff like that. Or I just like to, the content that I create, or at least what I've seen the best, is people that get to spend a little time in the space of being like, oh, I really liked reading this morning in this nook. Tomorrow, let me shoot this, or like just to feel a little more lived in and felt in that sense. Or hey, at 4 o'clock, the sun comes in so nice in this area. Let's make sure tomorrow we're set up to shoot at that. As opposed to just kind of like, because right when you get to the house, you're like, all right, everything is perfectly how they do it. We need to create some content straight ahead of like, this house is perfectly clean. And then it's like, what is it a little lived in? And then how does the light hit it in certain ways or whatever? And so those are just some things to think about. But I think 2 days, 2 nights is the what we've seen to be the best. And I think also if a creator is reaching out to you, you have the leverage then in that space. And if you've never worked with them before, we've definitely seen a lot of different options to do of whether or not it's a, hey, if this is prime time for you and they want a weekend and you're like, man, but we really need some photos or whatever, you can be like, great, cover the cleaning fees. So that way you're at least not like in the negative, or if you've never worked with them before, or pushing back and being like, hey, I can do this, but we can do weekdays. Like this is all that I have available. We don't do weekends, kind of a line in the sand. Or if you want to, of just kind of like having them pay the down payment or the cleaning fee, and until you get your deliverables back, you then refund them if that's the discussion that you made in terms of the exchange. I think if you're reaching out to creators to come to your property, there is the likelihood that you are going to cover some sort of the expenses, because they hadn't really thought to come to you. They like your house and they're like, yeah, I can do this. And so do you see the difference there in terms of the outreach? That's what we've seen as a best practice in that sense.
Absolutely. It's just like, network television. I mean, if the network's going to recruit like, the content they want, then they have to pay for it. But then there's also paid programming, right? Where the client comes to the platform that has the audience saying, I'd like an hour of your time on a Saturday or something. Like, what's it going to cost? Rory's head is exploding right here because he, just being the content creator that he is, he lets me do all the marketing. So I think as an attorney, you can imagine how things might be a little bit different, like, with our properties, if he was in charge of the creative eye or the conversation. But, Rory, what are you thinking here? Like, where does this fit in with other people that are at least in, the short-term rental space, as kind of an insider, but outsider?
I mean, I can see this if somebody approaches this as just like one thing that they want to do, like, what's your marketing strategy this year? Well, I'm going to have a content creator come out and do some posts. That doesn't sound like a strategy. You really need to think about, well, how does this fit in with everything else that I'm doing to drum up support, to keep it consistent? What am I going to do to build up to this? What am I going to do after this? You can't just plug and play and expect this to increase your revenue this year. This sounds like this is not the approach that would work for that.
Yeah. So, all right. So this platform, I've had people favorite us as well, and I could certainly reach out to them. And I think that the people that I have not had anyone stay yet because I haven't really gone down that road, but I do want to have like a rental agreement also with these people. So the questions with those two things: number one, if someone does favorite your property, is it a best practice for the owner to just reach out and say hi and just be like, hey, I saw you favorited my property. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, any kind of way to encourage that, if you really do like their stuff, like I say, open that up, and they kind of made the first approach. It's almost like dating. Sometimes how I
right?
Yeah. Sometimes how I give the analogy of what we are is like, hey, we're kind of like a dating site of like homes that are wanting to have creators and creators that are wanting to travel. And so we are here to like introduce those two. And so, there's nothing wrong with opening that conversation. If you're like, I'm on the fence, I'll let them reach out so that, if that's the case, or we have enough people. But if you're really hungry for this, or wanting to just like get a better understanding of communicating and figuring out the creator economy landscape, I think, that's what the platform's for, is to just kind of like open up and chat and see if there is a good connection. I do know a property manager on our site as well, as like he, before anything kind of goes through, is like he jumps on a call with them just to like catch a vibe and see, like, give them a little understanding and hear about it a little bit more, and I think give a little more streamline of communication. But I do think, I don't think he goes about it where anything that's said on there isn't then written in, like in paper or some sort of like through email, but it's just more to like build this connection with the creator to understand the how to tell the story of the home, because each home is different in that side.
Yeah. Rental agreements. Do you have, are you allowed to give advice on that as, the founder of the platform? From our perspective, the people that I know that have used or worked with content creators always send a rental agreement.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. I think that's important to do in terms of like just insurance side of things and all of that. And I think having it written in paper it's a contract. Even though they're getting a potential free stay or whatever you end up agreeing on, I think those agreements need to be written up. We haven't seen any like issues of someone going to a property and not delivering. But at the same time, like there's hiccups here and there in any kind of business interaction. And so just to kind of like hold everyone accountable, I think is really important.
Yeah. From the creator perspective, what is the incentive to be on the platform?
Yeah, it allows for, well, it builds your portfolio. Like you said, is like you only have one property on your platform. And let's say we hit it off and I have availability and you're like, okay, great. Like, let's work with Jordan. And I go and I perform and I deliver and you love the work. You're going to email me a day late once you get it and be like, this is great. We have 3 more properties that we want you to go to. What is your availability? Awesome. Hey, all right, let's 3 properties I wasn't planning on doing. I charge X, let's whatever. Or, hey, I love to continue to travel. I'm going to do a road trip. This eases that. I build my portfolio. I get to continue to level up the lifestyle that I am trying to portray to my audience to help out. And because you have a network, and I'm sure that and then it's word of mouth from there. And so there is this understanding of, just needing to be a good business person and wanting to live a certain lifestyle and be able to do that on a creator space. And so it's just good business. And we charge the creators a small fee, like a month, to have access to the properties, because we know the value of we're a bit more of like a property, like we favor the properties a little bit more than the creators, just because like there's a lot of money and investment that go into your properties, and making sure that is okay and understanding in that space, while still understanding what's important in the values and how we can benefit creators.